The clinking of silverware and soft piano notes filled the air as sunlight poured through the restaurant's tall windows. Every movement seemed choreographed until one small mistake shattered the harmony. A napkin slipped, a glass tipped, and a drop of red wine splashed across a designer dress. Gasps rippled through the room. At a corner table, an elegant woman's face stiffened with outrage, her pride wounded before an audience of strangers. The young waitress froze, apology caught in her throat. And watching from a few steps away, her husband, silent, composed, ready to see far more than anyone else in that room understood. The restaurant. La Lumiere wasn't just a place to eat, it was a stage for the city's elite. Every detail, from the crystal chandeliers to the velvet seats, whispered of quiet wealth. Among the regular patrons was Victoria Hale, known for her elegance, her connections, and her certainty that the world revolved in polished circles. She had built her image carefully, a symbol of perfection, power, and taste. Across the room, Amara worked, a young waitress with steady hands and soft eyes. She moved gracefully between tables, her posture calm even when the pressure rose. No one noticed her exhaustion or the quiet determination that came from working 2 jobs and supporting her mother's medical care. That afternoon, Victoria arrived for lunch with her husband, Daniel, a man whose success was matched only by his humility. He greeted the staff with warmth that drew smiles, something Victoria viewed as unnecessary familiarity. She believed kindness was best kept within one's own circle. When Amara approached their table, Daniel thanked her by name. Victoria arched an eyebrow. He knows her, she thought. She noticed the waitress's crisp uniform, the careful way she handled each item, the faint nervousness behind her professionalism. Then it happened, an accidental spill, a single drop of wine that darkened the edge of Victoria's sleeve. The room's hum faltered. Heads turned. For a brief second, time seemed to stretch thin. Victoria's composure cracked, and a flash of anger surfaced beneath the polish. Daniel's gaze shifted, first to his wife, then to the waitress. Something unspoken passed between them, a quiet question of dignity, of grace, of who would truly reveal their character next. The sound of the wine glass settling back onto the table echoed louder than it should have. A hush spread across nearby diners, the kind of quiet that comes when people sense a storm. Victoria's jaw tightened as she stared at the faint stain on her silk sleeve. It wasn't the mark that angered her, it was the embarrassment. Eyes were on her, and she refused to appear small before anyone. Her tone dropped, calm but cutting. "I assume you'll be more careful next time?" Amara nodded quickly, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry, ma'am." She reached for a napkin, but Victoria waved her off, reclaiming her sense of superiority. The moment felt longer than it should have, like time itself had paused to test who each of them truly was. Daniel set down his fork. "Vic, it's fine," he said softly. She already apologized. But Victoria wasn't hearing him, not really. She was hearing the echo of her own pride, the voice that whispered she had earned the right to expect perfection. Amara retreated to the counter, her composure cracking only when she turned away. Her chest tightened, but she breathed through it. "Don't cry, not here." Not for this. She'd worked too hard to let a single moment of disrespect undo her. At another table, a few guests whispered. Some shook their heads. Others looked away, pretending not to see. In that silence, Amara realized how easy it was for people to ignore small cruelties when they weren't directed at them. Back at the table, Daniel's expression had changed. His usual warmth had faded, replaced by quiet disappointment. He had always admired his wife's confidence, but what he saw now wasn't strength. It was fragility dressed as power. Minutes passed before Victoria spoke again, trying to restore normalcy. "You're unusually quiet," she said lightly. Daniel met her gaze. "Just thinking," he replied, "about how easily we forget that respect isn't about status. It's about choice." His tone wasn't angry. It was reflective, almost sorrowful, and that unsettled her more than any argument could have. As lunch ended, Amara approached one last time to deliver the check. Her hands didn't shake this time. Daniel smiled kindly and thanked her again, slipping something extra inside the folder. Victoria said nothing, her pride still forming a shield she wasn't ready to lower. When they stood to leave, Daniel turned to Amara. "You're doing good work," he said. "Keep going." Amara smiled, unsure what he meant but grateful for his kindness. Outside, as the valet brought their car around, Victoria noticed Daniel reading a small card. "What's that?" she asked, her voice clipped. He handed it to her. It was a flyer, handmade, printed with care, Community Learning Center, volunteer program for underprivileged youth. Amara's name was listed as one of the coordinators. Victoria stared at it, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "She works there?" Daniel nodded. "Yes. The same woman you scolded for a mistake spends her nights helping kids finish school." The words lingered, quiet and piercing. Victoria didn't reply. She looked at the flyer, the weight of her earlier words sinking in. As their car pulled away, she turned to the window, watching the restaurant disappear in the distance. For the first time in years, she didn't feel proud. She felt small. And that humility, though painful, was the first honest thing she'd felt in a long time. The drive home was wrapped in silence. The city lights flashed across the windshield like fragments of reflection, bright, brief, impossible to hold. Victoria watched them blur past while Daniel's quiet filled the car heavier than words. When they reached their house, Daniel stopped at the gate but didn't turn off the engine. "You know," he said softly, "every day people tell me what success looks like. But the older I get, the more I think it's just how we treat those who can't give us anything in return." Then he stepped out, leaving her to sit with that truth. Inside, Victoria drifted through rooms that suddenly felt too large, too ornate. Every polished surface seemed to mirror a version of herself she didn't want to see. Elegant, yes, but hollow. She thought of Amara's calm eyes, of the handmade flyer, of Daniel's disappointment. Sleep refused her. At dawn, she stood before her closet, fingertips brushing fabrics that had always felt like armor. Now they felt like excuses. She chose a plain dress and left without telling anyone where she was going. The restaurant was quiet when she arrived. Morning light painted soft gold over the empty tables. Amara was there folding napkins for the lunch shift. When she looked up and saw Victoria, surprise flickered across her face. Victoria walked closer, her voice low. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Yesterday I forgot that people matter more than moments. You didn't deserve that." Amara hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you," she said. Her tone carried no resentment, only sincerity. Victoria noticed the flyer pinned by the counter, the same one from the night before. "I'd like to help," she added quietly. "If that's all right," Amara's expression softened into a genuine smile. "We always have room for one more." Something inside Victoria shifted, a small, almost invisible turning of the heart. The arrogance that once filled her seemed to drain away, replaced by a fragile sense of clarity. For the first time, she wasn't performing grace. She was practicing it. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of Victoria's life changed quietly, almost without her noticing. Every Saturday, she drove across town, not to boutiques or brunches, but to the modest brick building that housed the Community Learning Center. The scent of chalk and brewed coffee replaced perfume and wine. Amara was there each time, greeting volunteers, stacking books, laughing with the students who filled the narrow halls. She never mentioned the restaurant incident again, and that unspoken grace gave Victoria the freedom to learn. She started small, organizing supplies, proofreading essays, serving lunch to children who reminded her that kindness wasn't something you claimed, it was something you practiced. Slowly, the woman who once demanded perfection began to find joy in imperfection. Paint-stained tables, mismatched chairs, and people whose stories mattered more than appearances. At the center's end-of-year gathering, Victoria stood beside Amara on the small stage. Cameras clicked, but for once she didn't pose. She spoke from somewhere honest. I used to believe refinement came from what we owned, she said, but it truly comes from how we see others. I came here to give, but I've been the one receiving. Applause filled the room. But what lingered most was the warmth in Amara's smile, a quiet affirmation that people can change when humility replaces pride. Later, Daniel found her outside beneath the fading sunset. "You look lighter," he said. She nodded. "Maybe for the first time, I finally am." They stood there watching children chase each other across the parking lot, their laughter echoing against the walls of the place that had rewritten them both. Real elegance isn't in what we show the world, it's in how we choose to see it.